Hi everybody, Brian here from quantlabs.net. Welcome to the new bot that I've been working on since Saturday. Today is Tuesday, May 5th, 2:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I put out a video last week entitled Treating Bot Software Parameter Considerations with Rate of Change Entry. This has been a bit of a challenge to figure out how to design it. So I'm designing it in the way, if you are an old school developer like myself, you might know the terminology client server type of software design. That's what I'm approaching with this, is that I will be giving the client end of the software to my customers that do and are currently signed up to this analytics service. From there, they will have control on the filters for entries and exits. There's four strategy styles right now that I'm working on. I've got pretty well the server end kind of done, but most of the complexity is going to be in the client end, and that's what people will download. But a lot of the parameters for that control will be kind of described here in this video. Plus, there's a link here somewhere to follow up right here. So if you want to learn more, that's where you go. All right, so currently, as it stands right now, the challenge has been to get bots that actually provide trading opportunity when even the markets are negative. So this is the database. So essentially, what you have here is you have the big four that I'm watching. The metrics that I use, that people agree that there's no other asset class that kind of gives you this idea of how you can build a metric around the overall asset class. This, of course, being cryptocurrency. So we just track the big four. I mean, there's some that are bigger and then they drop off and da da da. But usually, consistently for the last few years, there's been Ethereum, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Bitcoin Cash. Those are pretty well the standards that seem to move up and down, and people agree that that's something to look at as a metric. From there, we're able to generate this what I call a weighted average of those moves, and obviously the weighting is based upon volume of the coin. So the big one, obviously Bitcoin will have a big skew on that. So for instance, if Bitcoin's negative like it is here, it will skew towards negative, but it will still consider all of the other pairs that will outperform. So in terms of outperforming, I put up a video on my Instagram last week that showed on a 5-day, Bitcoin was still killing both, let's say, oil, gold, the major markets out of the US. It was just still killing it, at least double for 5 days. 30 days, it was 30% for a 30-day return. So that's pretty strong. And this is why I'm very, very invested heavily and only invested in crypto because of this. Because I know that the crypto, like just alone, Bitcoin will outperform all of the others. Now, I have a new metric way of capturing the top performers at any time I want. Part of that is I'm able to show the returns over different time periods. So we got 1 day, 1 hour, 30-day, 365, 7-day, 90-day, and year-to-date. So what I want to show you specifically, just alone in crypto, you can see here, these are the current pairs, these ones right here, that are outperforming the metrics I just showed you in terms of Bitcoin. So there will be coins that are outperforming. But the problem is, which ones do you trade? How do you trade them because of the crazy volatility that we know about? But let me just show you, even if you were to do a buy and hold type of strategy, when you look at pairs like Chainlink here, you can see the year to date is 101% since the beginning of the year. How has your stock market portfolio been performing lately? Then you also have Tezos, which is at 110%. Again, how's your trading been so far? So if you just traded these two guys alone, you'd have been up doubling your money since the beginning of the year. There's a few other ones that we can look at. Bitcoin Cash, 18%. Stellar's been doing pretty good at 59%, and Ethereum at 58%. So again, you need to ask yourself, why are you trading anything else when you get basically blowing your brains out, wasting your time, your money, all of that when you get these kind of returns, and even on a buy and hold strategy on that. So I'm just showing you that there are other coins outside of Bitcoin that does outperform Bitcoin itself, and that's what we're going to track. That's what we're able to focus on with this new bot. So with that, going back to the database, you can see here, even though my two little bots traditionally, or strategies is probably a better word to put it, was struggling to put on trades because of this negative weighted moving average. But when you look at, even though that they're negative, it's still to say, well, maybe, just maybe, you might have these four potential mock positions that would profit, may or may not. I could talk about individually on these type of strategies based upon my experience from what I've been talking about. But that's the whole point of this newsletter service that I'll talk about as well, which will go in conjunction with this bot service. So these may actually lose, but that brings me to here. So the four types of strategies that we're looking at right now are these. Let me just get this set up right. Okay, there we go. All right, so what we have here is we have different styles of trading when it comes to crypto. I've kind of covered it all in Binance. Binance is the exchange that I recommend. It's the most honest. But there's certain other coins that I could trade outside of Binance on other exchanges, because there are other coins that do perform, but two questions that will come up is, can you trust the coin? Is it manipulated? And if you go onto an exchange outside of like the bigger Asian exchanges, which I'm not going to name, outside of Binance, can you trust that exchange? Because they may do manipulation, market making, or whatever else to go against you, no different than what I found in pretty well majority of retail Forex brokers. That's why I'm out of Forex, because it's a joke to trade on Forex with pitting returns, and then you have to add on the extra risk to try to get the same kind of performance that you would get with Bitcoin, with crypto, and you don't have to do any of that stupid leverage crap. But you can do crazy leverage in Binance futures of up to 125, so that does exist. So let's talk about the strategy styles. I've talked about momentum based, which those still exist and they perform under certain conditions. On top of that, I've talked about moving average, mean reversion type of strategies. Right now in Bitcoin, unless you go and trade 100% in futures, you can't short Binance. You can't short in Binance. You can short in Binance futures, but not Binance spot. So most of these will trade in the spot market for now, but you can somewhat, through margin trading, short in Binance futures. So we're not there yet. That's where you need a larger account. I don't think I would recommend anybody new at this to go into the Binance futures, especially short, because you will probably lose money big time. So that's why I would just focus on the spot market for Binance. But you can still use the futures data because it's the spot market. A lot of the performance is driven off of the futures market, and I do see more volume going into the futures market. But as I said, I still want to stay in the spot market just because that's a good safe, well, not safe, but it's just lower risk if you do lose in the spot market versus in the Binance futures market, because the futures market, as I said, you can be pretty high risk if you do lose, meaning you lose more. So that's the methodology at this point. And momentum does well. Last week, Bitcoin added about $1,000 on itself, which was a 20% increase over a 24-hour period. So I've developed certain strategies over the last few months and over the last year. I've developed different strategies for different market conditions. So Out of that, I'm sure there's other market conditions that are not covered, but it's covered a lot. So I've talked about momentum based here, and going back to the mean reversion, it's kind of half mean reversion, meaning that it will the strategy will oscillate with the price that it's watching, uh, but making sure it is at least performing. And when I say performing, it's at least performing a 1/4% move at that time. Uh, Meaning, if it's a 1/4%, it will cover the commission fees of Binance, which is 1/10%. So if you have a buy or an entry, that's going to be 1/10%, and then you have to sell, which is going to be 1/10%. So I figure if you're at least moving a 1/4%, you're doing okay. You should make a little bit of profit if the timing's right, and that's the danger there. On top of what the other danger is the whipsaws because of the crazy volatility that come in when you see a position that looks good, then a whipsaw comes in and knocks out your position to lose money. And I see that time and time again, but I have a methodology to sort of control that. So what we have is two Binance Futures momentum-based strategies. There's 24 coins out of that Binance Futures market. There's different ways you can control what you want to trade within that strategy. The other one that is fairly new that I'm testing, that if the markets are negative, that you could somewhat trade. So here, as an example, if the markets are negative, as in here, the weighted average, okay, what you'll find is you can still find positions that may have some outperformance, and you could, if you want, trade those. But again, you have those are kind of high risk because you could lose money. And from my experience so far, that is the case. But I want to make them available to people that if they feel risky. And there's going to be parameters in there in the client software that will be able to hopefully minimize the chances or probability of losing. So those are the two momentum based. Now there is another momentum based strategy. Yeah. Okay. So there's an oscillating Binance futures one, specifically for Bitcoin. I have looked at um, the futures market with Bitcoin by volume, without a doubt. Trading Bitcoin futures, but trading in the spot market, but watching the Bitcoin Binance futures market, but trade in the futures market. Sorry, trade in the. Let me start again. Using the Binance Futures Bitcoin market data, but then what it sees you trade in the spot market for Bitcoin in USDT. So that strategy will work wonders when when Bitcoin is moving and moving up aggressively at 2, 3, 4, and beyond percent, because that can be watched through this metric right here on the Bitcoin USD or USDT. So if Bitcoin's on the move, this strategy can do really, really good. You can make a lot of money if the Bitcoin's moving. And I've also included a similar one for oscillating on spot data that trade USDT market, as well, because obviously if Binance is moving, the other ones will move as well. So there is that. There's another one that I have that will trade the Ethereum spot market, and oddly enough, that won't work in an uptrend market, but will and can do nice as a defensive strategy when the market drops. Now, again, each strategy that you see here that I list will have its own set of parameters for both the entry and the exit. I've talked about it in pretty well great length on how I'm going to use it. It's 48 minutes long. So there'll be a set of parameters that you can control at a master level. And then at each level on the strategy style, you'll be able to override the master parameter as well. So in there, I have put the ability to control the entry. You'll be able to also control the exit, and you can control it based upon things like trade minimum amount of this, based on volume, maybe trade minimum based upon the dollar value set in the USDT, because certain ones will trade in the USDT, which is equivalent to US dollar. So trade only those pairs that meet that certain price value in USDT. There's also, as I said, volume. You can exempt certain coins not to be traded at all. Only trade when the moving average, this guy that I mentioned here, is at a certain percent. So there's going to be a lot of flexibility that you will control. Now, this is the key here. If you're wanting to use this bot exclusively 100% and just turn it on, and just expect to get signals and whatever the settings are at a default to make money, that will not fly. And I say that because based upon the development and progress for people who are following over, let's say, the last month or two, they will know that I developed the bot a certain way, and the market conditions where it goes tight range or range bound and there's no trading opportunities. That's why this kind of bot, or the USDT kind of bot, will work in a really tight range, but then at the other end you will still be able to get trading opportunities, but you will be able to control, as I said, the entry and the exit for those pairs. So for instance, if you know that the market's negative and these are the potential USDT pairs that you can choose, you can exempt those and not even trade these, and you can filter them out again based upon price, and then you can also filter them out based upon volume as well. So there are those parameters in place. And at the other end, I'm going to make it where you can turn on and off certain strategies. Um, turn on and off certain strategies. And maybe, as I said, there's going to be an Ethereum strategy as well for spot that will be able to trade, as I said, in a downtrend, and maybe just turn on that strategy when the weighted moving average moves negative, and only trade that, but keep the other ones off, or things like that, based upon the weighted moving average strategy metric, because that is pretty standard now. I'm very comfortable with that. It seems to work pretty good. It's just trying to figure exactly what point you want to turn on and off strategies based upon that metric. And people are going to go, as I said, if you're not keeping up to date with those parameters and what to put in and change as the market conditions change, you will lose money if you just keep it open at one time. And I'm not going to be taking any form of responsibility for that. That's no way. That's why I'm pushing the control back onto people, our customers, because this service will enable you to have a true bot, but it's not just one bot, really. It's going to be 4 or 5 different strategies in place that you can control the entries and exits of each one, which will make life a lot easier because you're not having to program it and develop it and maintain it. You will maintain it through the parameter settings and turn on and off the bot based upon those market conditions. On top of that, as an add-on, I will add like I said, a newsletter type of service that I'm doing. I'm going to be trading the same way as everybody else that signs up for this. I'll have my own exact same version of the customer client bot, or bot software that you download. So it'll be no different from myself versus other people. But what I'll do is I'll be constantly adjusting those parameters within the client bot based upon the market settings. And because of that, I'll make that data known to people that are part of the service. So there's going to be 2 elements of the service. Is why would it be expensive? Well, first, you're going to have, as I said, the service that you'll be able to change parameters and be able to control the signals that come in, filter them out, which ones you want, control the entries and the exits manually through parameter settings. On top of, you're going to get the education on what is working and what's not working. I've just joined a few services right now that they put out that works, and reports. I'm not going to get into that, but it seems to work pretty good, and I've verified that through the data that I've already presented here. So there's numerous sources I'll be looking at as well and changing my parameters based on that. So this is the best way to control your bot through the signaling that my service provides, and It's going to be done through an INI file, and there's going to be no interface to it. It's just going to be controlled through an INI file, and you just basically launch or break the process and change your parameters, and then relaunch the bot. And it'll be available for Windows and Mac, and it can be set up for Linux as well, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So that's where we're going with this, and it looks good. So I'll be testing the signaling and the email into that, and then I will have to put, I'd say, 90% of the focus on the client bot as well. So just wanted to show you that. Looks pretty good, pretty excited, and we shall go from there. Talk to you later.